Did you know that you can use Google's AI model completely free up to 1 million tokens? And we can use it in our advantage to create any kind of application. But in this video, I'll show you how to create your own chatbot using the Google Gemini SDK. I'll show you how to set up Next.js, TypeScript, and Tailwind CSS from scratch. By the end of this video, you will have a completely customizable chatbot that you could offer to any startup, small business, or showcasing the project in your portfolios. I'll be following the Google Gemini clone guide available on my website in 5 different languages. So let's dive in. Make sure you have installing Node.js on your computer, a code editor like VS Code, and your access key for Google Gemini API. I'll leave a link in the description to a video that shows how to obtain the key in case you need it. This is how we're going to structure our project. We will have an API route that will handle the model interaction, an util folder for configuring the Google SDK, and one simple page for the chat interface. So first, we're going to create a new project. Open your terminal and type the command npx create next add latest -ts and -tailwind, and this command set a new web using Next.js, Tailwind CSS, and TypeScript. You'll be asked to name your project. Go ahead and call it Gemini Clone or any name you like. When prompting, you can say ESLint no, source directory yes, add router yes, turbopath yes, alias set to no. Moving to your new project folder with the command cd Gemini clone, and time to install 2 important dependencies that will rely on our application. So run the command npm install Google Generative AI and Lucidity React. The Google Generative AI connects your ad to Google Gemini's models, and Lucidity React gives you a set of clean and simple icons that you can use in your frontend. Then we need to create a file called .env.local. Open that file and create this variable to store your Gemini secret key. So let's define the types and interface to structure our chat application. And this is crucial to ensure our data is consistent from the backend and the frontend. Inside the src folder, create a new file called type.ts. Inside this file, define the message row type that will help you distinguish between the message is sent by the user and those generated by the AI model. Then define a message part interface to represent the prompt or instruction that the user is sending. This could be a simple text and could be expanded to image, audio, and more. But for now, let's keep it with the text-only format. Define the structure for the message interface, which is required by the Google Gemini's models. That will take 2 properties: the row that must be type message row and the part that must be an array of type of message part. This basically helps organize the message with the sender and content information. After that, define the chat history interface that will be an array of message objects representing the entire conversation history between the user and the AI. Then define a generation config interface that will take the temperature to control the randomness of the response, a thought P to determine the sampling diversity, and response mimic type to specify the format of the response. And finally, define a chat setting interface with the property of temperature, model, and season instruction. We will use this interface to control and personalize the AI's behavior. Using TypeScript interface like this not only makes your code more readable, it also helps catch potential bugs. Moving on, we'll implement the utility function that handles the interaction with the Google Generative AI. This function will manage sending message and receiving the AI responses. So here's what to do. Create a folder inside the src, name it utils. Inside this folder, create a file called geminihelper.ts. And inside this file, start by importing the necessary libraries and types. Import the Google Generative AI, chat history, generation config, and chat setting from types. Retrieve the API key from the environment variables. Assign it to a variable using const API key equal to process.env.gemini API key. Then create a simple validation with an if statement to check that the key exists. Use if not API key, open your bracket, throw a new error and a message saying that the Gemini API key is not defined. Now initialize the Google Generative AI client using the following line: const gen AI equals new Google Generative AI and pass your API key. This is basically telling your ad, hey, here's my key, set up the AI so I can start using it. Then define and export the main function to handle the communication with the AI. Use export async function, and I'm going to name this function chat to Gemini, open parentheses, and you're going to pass 3 parameters, the user message, that's a string, that will be the prompt that the user is typing, the history equals to the chat history, settings equals to the chat setting types. And this function will return a promise as a string, so we are expecting to receive a plain text from the AI. Next, declare a new variable using const model equals to gen AI and call the method getGenerative_model, open parentheses and bracket, and we're going to pass 2 properties, the model and system instruction. Assign the model to settings.model, use an OR to define a default value for the model. And for the system instruction, set settings.systemInstruction, include an OR as a helpful assistant. Basically, this is the first prompt that you use in ChatGPT or another AI model, like act as a developer, specialized marketing, or any other characteristic to modify the AI's behavior. Then we need to configure how the AI generates response and use the generation config type and pass 3 properties, the temperature, .p, and the response mimic type. The temperature set it to system.temperature or 1, .p 0.95, and response mimic type text plain. And then initiate a chat session with the AI model, declare a new variable named chat session, set it equal to model, call the method start chat, and you're going to pass 2 properties, the generation config and the history. All these configuration steps will help you set up the initialization for a multimodal chatbot. The model interaction is now in place. It can handle history, change model, and control the response behavior. And for the final piece, we need to send the user message and handle the AI response. So open a try catch block. Inside the try, you're going to declare a new variable named result, set it equals to await, call chat section, and call the method send message and pass the user message parameter. Then return the AI response, use return result.response.text. And in the catch block, console the error and throw the error for your debugging. This utility function manages the communication with the AI model, handling the chat session, and process the user message. Now, we need to set up the API route that will handle the post request from the front end, process the user message, and return the AI-generated response. Inside the add folder, you're going to create a new folder named API, add another folder inside it, call this one chat, and inside the chat folder, create a file named root.ts. This is a standard structure for creating API routes in Next.js. We'll import the required libraries and functions. Start with NextResponse, used to craft HTTP response in Next.js, then import the chat to Gemini helper function that we just created, and don't forget to bring the chat history and chat setting that keep our API type safe. Export the post function to handle incoming requests. Within the post function, open a try catch block, extract the user message, history, and setting from the incoming JSON request, and we're going to ensure they added to the defined types. Call the chat to Gemini function with extracted data to obtain the AI response. Return a JSON response containing the AI message to the client. Catch any error that occurred during the process, log them for debugging, and return a JSON error response with a 500 status code to inform the client of a failure. With this, you should now have an API route to use to interact with the Google AI model. In fact, we can test it. You could use Postman or the Thunder client extension from Visual Studio Code. Open your terminal and run the command npm run dev. If you have Thunder client, you could click on the lightning bolt in the left panel of the Visual Studio Code to open a new window. Click on new request. Then you're going to make a post request to localhost 3000 to API chat. Then click on body and you're going to pass a JSON with the user message, a history, and the settings. And we got a status 500, something is wrong. If we spec into the terminal, it's saying that we haven't set our Gemini API key. So before testing your API, make sure to set your Google Gemini's API key. After setting my key, I just need to send the request again, wait for the model to respond, and as you can see, we have the response from the AI model. Now it's time to create our chatbot interface. So go back to your project folder. Inside the SRC folder, you're gonna create a new folder named component, and inside this folder, create another folder, name it UI. And this is just a common and clean way to organize reusable UI components in modern front-end projects. And inside the UI folder, create a new file, name it messagewindow.txt. Open the messagewindow.txt, define this component as a client component with the use client to Next.js. This is basically telling Next.js, run this component in the browser, not in the server. And we're going to import useRef and useEffect from React, the chat history from type, and we're going to import two icons from Lucid React. Define the prompt that message window will receive, create an interface named message window pros, pass the history, and set the type to chat history. Then create the message window functional component and pass a prompt named history and assign it to the message window props. Then set a reference for auto scrolling. Create a new variable named message and ref equals to useRef and assign the type to HTML div element parenthesis no. After that, we'll create a useEffect function that automatically scrolls to the bottom every time a new message comes in. We'll use the message and ref with reference current and scroll into view. Add a return, and inside it, we'll iterate over the chat history to display each message. Create a scrollable container that takes up the remaining space using Flex1. Add some padding with P3 and a vertical overflow with overflow Y auto. Then we're gonna center our content in the page, so create a new div, set a limit to the maximum width with the max W3XL, and to center the content, we're gonna use a margin horizontal to auto using MX auto. Open the bracket, and we're going to use a map in the history array to display each message. Create a new variable to check if the message was sent by the user, and for each message, we're going to return a message bubble in the chat. Add a new div to create the container for the message. Include the key as index, and in the class, if the message is sent by the user, we align it to the right, otherwise to the left. Then we're going to add an avatar to identify if the message is from the user or the AI. So we add the avatar before the message, and we check if the message is not from the user, then we show the avatar with a circular gray background and a bot icon. Then we create the message bubble with padding and a subtle shadow, and we change the color and corner style depending who sent the message. And you can copy the same avatar and put it after the message. Change the validation to check if the message is sent from the user. Finally, create a new div and include the message and ref so we can scroll automatically to the last message. Next, let's build the input field where the user will type their message. Create a new file and name it chat input in the components UI folders. Make this component a client component with the use client at the beginning of the file. Import use state from React, and we're going to use three icons from Lucid React. Let's define the TypeScript interface for our component props. So use interface and name it chat input. That should expect an onSend function that receives a message as a string and won't return anything. That's why we use void at the end. Also include another prop on open setting that is a function that won't return anything. Now create the chat input functional component, pass the onSend and on open setting, and set the type to chat input props. Create a message state to handle the input from the user. Then create a handling change function to update the message state as the user types. Set message to e.target.value. Create another function that will send the message to the API. Then create two more functions. One will clear the input every time the user sends the message, and the other function will detect when the user press enter to send the message. Add a return, and we're going to decide the input with the new modern style that AI models are using right now. To pin the input bar at the bottom of the screen, create a new div, and in the class name, you're going to make it fixed, bottom 0, left 0, right 0, and make this flex with the flex call. And we're going to center horizontally and define a max width with max WXL4. Then we need to create the main input container. So add a new div, and in the class name, make a flex, use item center, Add a subtle border with the border and border dash black slash 10. Add some padding, a margin horizontally with MX4. Make the top of the container a little rounded with rounded T3XL. Use background white and a subtle shadow with shadow and D. Then we add another D to group the text area and the bottom group. In the class name, make it relative for the axonal element. Make this D take all the available space with flex 1 and add some margin horizontal with MX2. Add a text area and in the class name, use W full to take the complete width. Add some padding horizontally and vertical. Make the background transparent. No borders with border none. And for the focus, outline none. Include a placeholder with the value type message, the value as the message state, the onChain and onKeyDown function. Then we're going to show a clear button if the message isn't ending so the user can have a quick way to reset the input. Then add a new div to be the right section of the input bar. This will hold the setting and send button side by side. Add a new button with the gear icon that when clicked will open the settings panel. Add another button and in the class name, add some padding and make it fully rounded in the corner. Then we're going to check if there is a message, the button will turn purple and clickable. If not, we're going to make it gray and show a disabled cursor. After that, pass the handle send to the onClick function, disable that button if no message is present, and include a send icon from Lucid React. Okay, now that we had our chat input and the message window, we can render our chat interface. Go to your main page in your project folder, delete all the content in page, and also delete all the content in the global CSS except from the import from Tailwind CSS. Use client at the top of your page to make this a client component. Import use state from React, the chat input component, the message window. From types, import the chat history, the message, and the message role. Create the functional component for the homepage. Create a history state with use state and set the type to chat history, and for the value use an empty array. Add another state for the settings, set the type of chat setting, add an object for default value for the temperature, model, and system instruction. Then we need to define our main function that will communicate with the API and the AI model. Define an async function that will take the user message as an argument. Create a new user message object, assign the role as user, parse as an array and the text message, add the new message in the chat history, and update the state to show in the UI. Open a try-catch block and we're going to send a post request to our API endpoint. In a new variable named response, set it equals to await fetch to API/chat. Open the bracket, set the method as post. In the header, set it to the content type application JSON and pass the body as a JSON stringify. Pass the user message, pass the message state, the history, the updated history, and the settings. In a new variable named data, wait for the response and convert it to a JSON. We add a if statement to check if the server returns an error. We log to a stop to prevent the ad from adding a broken response. Then build the AI reply message as an object in a new variable with the role of model and containing the response from the API. Then update the chat history with the AI response, and in the catch block, if something goes wrong during the request, we log into the console. And the final step, we return a main container with a vertical layout using flex and flex code, return the message window and the chat input with the necessary props. If you go to your main page, you should now have your chatbot interface ready to interact with the Google Generative AI model. And this is one way to build a chatbot. If you want to finish the configuration to create the settings panel, you can visit my website and click on the Gemini clone guide. But if you prefer to work with Python and OpenAI, then you have to watch my video how to set up a fast API backend with OpenAI API.